It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, could a last-minute offer from the government avert next week's doctors' strike? The Health Secretary says he wants to rebuild relations as he makes an offer to the Doctors' Union to address what it calls the jobs crisis. The British Medical Association will now put that to its members, but won't call off the walkouts just yet. Also ahead, Number 10 publishes its list of 34 new peerages. Among them, former Olympic swimmer and women's rights activist Sharon Davies. We'll be speaking to her a little later in the programme. Also coming up, a special report into the growing problem of gambling addiction and why it affects some communities more than others. Plus, tributes to the best-selling author Sophie Kinsella, who has died at the age of 55. We speak to her friend and fellow novelist Jojo Moyes. And do you have what it takes to be a spy? We'll decode GCHQ's Christmas card with a former GCHQ intelligence analyst. All that to come, and much more on the UK Tonight. We begin with the breaking news this evening. The British Medical Association saying it will consult its members now on a new offer from the government that could stop the resident doctors' pre-Christmas strike action. Medics are due to walk out for 5 days from next Wednesday in an ongoing row over pay and concerns over training places. The offer from the government includes a rapid expansion of specialist training posts, but no pay rises. It comes as the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, says he wants to rebuild relations.
While I'm frustrated with the BMA, and I think they're playing games now with patients' lives and the lives of other doctors who'll be forced to cover strikes, that doesn't alter the fact that what we've put forward is a good deal for doctors. So I'm going over the head of the BMA now and appealing directly to doctors to work with a government that wants to work with you, to vote for a deal which tackles the jobs crisis that doctors have raised with us in a real and meaningful and urgent way, and would enable us to draw a line under this dispute and start the new year with a fresh start.
I'd like to apologise for any disruption caused, but this was entirely avoidable. We wrote to the Health Secretary on the 19th of November, which was hours after our last industrial action ended. He's had ample opportunity to come to the table and do a deal with us, and instead he waited until 9 o'clock on Sunday morning to present us with an offer. So that was after we announced this round of industrial action. This was entirely avoidable. This is the Health Secretary's timeline, and the timeline is regrettably on the government. We think we've put this offer to members neutrally. We will give the government and NHS England a response well in advance of the industrial action starting, and that is to allow members their say in what's been put forward.
Well, let's bring in our health correspondent Ashish Joshi. And Ashish, what are the next steps in this? We're waiting for the BMA's members' response to this offer. Do you think it goes far enough to meet their needs and their demands?
Well, the BMA committee for the residents doctors who have been negotiating, or trying at least to negotiate with Wes Streeting and the government, they must think there's something in this that their members might be interested in. The timeline now, Sarah-Jane, is that this offer goes to the BMA resident doctors membership. They have until the 15th of December, that's 2 days before the strike action is due to begin. They have up till the 15th to say that, yes, we are interested in this offer. And that would mean that the strike action for the 17th to the 22nd would be paused. So it's almost like it's in 2 stages. So they will now put this offer, the BMA committee will put this offer to their membership. The membership will say, it's enough there, we're interested, or reject it outright. And that will mean that the action for the 17th is paused. That will give them more time to study the government's offer in detail, and then there'll be another ballot to decide whether the industrial action is called off altogether or whether the industrial action will continue. So it's almost like in 2 stages. The first stage is to try and avert the action next week, and then if that is successful, then they'll look at the offer in greater detail. And as you said, the main thing that the BMA want is more money, and there isn't more money in this. This is about training places and making jobs available for UK-trained medics coming out of universities to make sure there are jobs for them, which was a key demand by the BMA. So that is one demand that's been met, but there isn't any more money on the table, and that could be a real issue for the members when they come to decide whether they want to pause strike action next week or not.
OK, we watch and we wait for the outcome of that. Ashish, in the meantime, big week examining the state of maternity services in the country. We've been looking at the failings in maternity care right across the country, and there have been more statistics out today reinforcing a lot of the stories of birth trauma we've been hearing here on Sky News over the last few days.
Yes, unfortunately, this Care Quality Commission report, they carry out one every year into the state of maternity services. There are marginal 1 or 2 percentage point improvements in some areas like communication and antenatal care. But where it really matters, Sarah-Jane, that's mothers who feel like they are not listened to, mothers who feel unsafe, mothers who feel abandoned at critical hours during their labour or their pregnancy, and mothers who feel that they have decisions imposed on them without any sort of conversation about what is about to happen to them. All of these seem to be recurring themes. I've been covering maternity scandals here on Sky News for years, and the same thing comes up again and again. And as you were just saying, we've been hearing from around 170 mothers this week who've contacted Sky News to share their birth trauma stories with us. And this is a recurring theme. This idea that the clinicians, the doctors, the midwives, the people who are supposed to be there and caring for these mothers and their babies at the point of delivery simply aren't doing enough to make enough women feel safe and protected. Now, Jack and Sarah were the parents of baby Harriet, one of the tragic victims of one of these maternity scandals. And we spoke to them on Sky News about their story and some more detail about what's in this CQC report. Jack and Sarah's baby Harriet would have turned 9 this year. They never got to celebrate a day of her life. She was stillborn. An independent report found 13 failings in Sarah's care.
The midwife looked and said, "Oh, you're about to deliver the baby. I can see the baby's head. You can only have a water bath. You're too late for anything else." They struggled to get Harriet's heartbeat. They called for a doctor. The doctor said, "Well, your bladder's full. We need to drain your bladder." So they drained that, and then he said, "I'm sorry, your baby's dead." And he left the room. And then they left me for 9 hours trying to deliver a dead baby because of communication error.
Now official statistics show that 1 in 5 women do not feel they're taken seriously if they raise a concern during labour or birth. 1 in 10 women also reported being left alone during this period, a statistic that has continued at the same level for the past 5 years.
Prime Minister. I am particularly concerned by maternity services, and that's why we've commissioned a review so every mother is heard, gets proper care at what should be a special time, and currently too many are failed.
Almost 750 recommendations have been made to improve maternity services, but change has been slow. This week, Sky News has been inundated with phone calls, texts, emails and other messages from mothers who have experienced birth trauma in the NHS. Today's survey shows, sadly, that these experiences are widespread, and it also shows how urgently maternity reform in this country is needed. Nottingham University Hospital has apologised to Harriet's family and acknowledged that it is likely Harriet would have survived had it not been for several shortcomings in her care. And it's not alone. Maternity care reform must happen soon, or more families like Jack, Sarah and Harriet will continue to suffer. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
Downing Street today released its list of 34 people who have been nominated for life peerages in the House of Lords. The chairman of Iceland, Richard Walker, and former number 10 Director of Communications, Matthew Doyle, are among the 25 new Labour nominations. Amongst the Conservative nominations, former Olympic swimmer and women's rights activist Sharon Davies, who's one of 3 people to be put forward by the opposition leader, Kemi Badenoch. And I'm pleased to say that Sharon joins us this evening. First of all, congratulations, Sharon. You've been sitting on this secret since June.
Thank you, Sarah-Jane. Yeah, I have. I got asked in June, and I think because the Labour Party was putting forward so many, the whole process took a little bit longer than normal. And it's quite a big secret, to keep from family and friends. I was allowed to tell my dad. My dad is like nearly 90, and I felt it was really important that he knew. So he's known a little while.
Yeah, the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, as I said, only gets 3 picks, and you were one of them. And right at the start, when you started your campaigning and your activism, you felt that you were a lone voice in protecting the integrity of women's sport. But Kemi Badenoch was an early ally, and you formed this relationship.
Wow.
Perhaps you can tell us a bit about it, because obviously that's part of what has got you to this point today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my position has always been one that's been pro-women. Women get 5% of the sponsorship dollar across the world in sport. So we have this tiny piece of the cake. We get hardly any major media exposure. And then we were told only a few years ago that we weren't even allowed a fair playing field. And I think that Kemi has always been on board with listening to the science and understanding the fact that what I wanted was fair sport for our girls, not to exclude anybody. We need to find ways to make sure that everyone is included in sport. And hopefully that's also what I bring to the House of Lords is obviously my, women's activism, safeguarding and sport. But I also want to bring sport to everybody. We need to get kids involved in sport. We need to keep them involved. We used to lose our girls from sport at 14, 15. We're now losing them at 11. So we have to think outside of the box and find ways to better engage them and to keep them involved. So it helps with their resilience, it gets them off their phones, it makes them healthier. And of course, it helps their mental health, which we know is in crisis at the moment.
Yeah, it's clear that you want to use this role to push women's rights forward. And, we've been reflecting so much on Sky News this week about women's voices not being listened to, whether it's about violence against women and girls, protecting women, whether it comes to maternity services, mothers not being listened to. Is that part of the role you see that taking on in Westminster?
Yeah, I mean, today, only today, there was a report released by the Women's Rights Network, which is talking about the increase in sexual assault in mixed changing rooms. So we've now gone to this stage where we create these mixed villages. And the sexual assaults have gone through the roof, because obviously what you're doing is you're putting all those perpetrators and those people who will take advantage of bad laws into a place where women just have no protection. So it's how do we be sensible and serious about this, and how do we work with the stats, and how do we try to protect women and give them a voice? And then how do we try to grow their participation? What we find all the time is, sadly, women just self-exclude. So, when we talk about inclusion, actually what happens is women self-exclude. They just stop going. If they feel that they're at risk or they're vulnerable in an environment like that, then they stop going to the swimming pool. And that's the last thing we want. So it's listening to women and then acting and trusting them, is really important.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up single-sex spaces, because I really do feel like that has become the lightning rod in this issue. And, part of your role taking on a peerage is holding the government to account. And, Labour has got itself in all sorts of twisted knots over the trans issue, the definition of what it is to be a woman. And the debate around women's rights and trans people is something that you've been a key voice on. And just a matter of days ago, the former head of the EHRC, the Equality and Human Rights Commission, said Labour has completely abandoned women's rights and left women and transgender people in essentially a grey zone. Baroness Faulkner saying the government's failure to publish statutory guidance after that Supreme Court ruling on single-sex spaces was because ministers were terrified of their MPs who wanted trans self-identification across all of society. This grey zone isn't helping anyone, is it? No. Women or trans people. And is that something you want to sort of hold the government to account on and push this forward?
Yeah, very much so. Baroness Faulkner did an amazing job. She's been fighting very hard to get women's voices out there. We've got the guidance from the Equality Act and the Supreme Court ruling, which was in April this year, and it's been sat on Bridget Phillison's desk now for 3 months. It makes it very clear that biological sex is the reference for sex, and then when we're talking about either sport or a private space, that must be based on biological sex. And then what we have to do is find alternatives. You know, it surely can't be beyond the will of man that we can create some neutral spaces, or that we make men's spaces safer for non-conforming men. What we can't do is throw women's rights and women's safeguarding and all the things that women have worked for the last few decades under the bus, because, you know, it's women that, as we will see this week, I mean, we've had horrendous statistics come out this week with young girls being, you know, raped and abused. And as I said, just talking today about, you know, what's going on in mixed sex changing rooms. This can't be allowed to carry on. We have to start being realistic. We have to start being honest, and we have to try and just find ways around this. You know, like with sport, it was throw women's sport under the bus rather than say, well, can't we create some mixed teams? You know, people are happy to sign away that the fact that they might get more injured playing a mixed game of football or a mixed game of rugby or a mixed game of rounders, then that's up to them. But we mustn't throw the women's sport under the bus to placate a group of people who want access to something which really isn't fair, and in a lot of contact sports was also very unsafe.
Yeah, you know, it needs reasoned and compassionate debate. Yeah. And, you know, this peerage is going to elevate your voice to a new level. And, you know, I know there are those that disagree with you. They tell you on social media, and, you know, you quite rightly stand your ground. And, you know, the House of Lords is a place for everyone to have different opinions. That's why it is there, to have a plethora of voices. Are you prepared for this next stage? Because I said it's going to be heightened as a baroness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you know, it is going to be a steep learning curve. I do a lot of reading. You know, I'm very aware of everything that's been going on in this environment. I understand sport really, really well. I hope I'm not a one-trick pony. I'm not there for one reason only. You know, I've been involved in elite sport for 50 years. I've been to 13 Olympic Games. I've been competing internationally since I was 11. I'd like to think that I can bring something to young people as well. I'm passionate about swimming, for example. You know, I helped get swimming on the national curriculum in the 80s. Now we're only actually sending half of our 11-year-olds can swim 25 metres when they leave school, because it's not actually Ofsted checked. So, you know, although it's there and it's part of the curriculum, it's not actually being followed through. And so our drowning rates have been going up. So there's lots of areas, you know, where I want to be able to be passionate, be positive, and have respectful debate. That's got to be the first port of call. And unfortunately, in the trans debate, that was one of the things that was actually squashed. I mean, you know, I've been talking about this for 10 years, but for 5 years, we just got called names and there was no debate. So we weren't even able to present the statistics and the facts. And now we've got, you know, the IOC saying that, you know, they will bring out rules and laws next year and they will protect the women's category going towards LA. So we've got there, but it's taken 10 years just to be able to get the science accepted.
Well, Sharon, listen, I'm really glad you could join us tonight to talk about this peerage. Again, congratulations. I thought you'd be out celebrating, having kept it a secret since June. But can I ask Baroness of, has that been decided yet?
Well, the kids think it should be Baroness Dogsbottom, but I've said no, they can't have that one. So I don't know yet. I think you have to go and see what's available. So it's usually around the places that you were brought up and you were born, and I live close to Bath. So we'll have to wait and see. I think Davies is a bit of a common name, so we'll have to find one that's a bit more unusual.
OK, well, Sharon, we look forward to seeing what it will be. And once again, congratulations. Thank you for joining us on Sky News. Thank you. Now, a man has been found guilty of murdering his ex-partner's sister and her 3 children in a house fire in Bradford. Prosecutors said that 40-year-old Sharaz Ali was motivated by jealousy and fuelled by drink and drugs when he set Bryony Gowerth's home alight last August. His former partner had been staying there but managed to escape. Our North of England correspondent Charlotte Leeming has this report.
Caught on camera, the moments before a catastrophic house fire, motivated by anger and jealousy, killed a mother and her 3 young children in Bradford. Sharaz Ali was targeting his ex-girlfriend Antonia Gareth. She'd ended their relationship and was living with her sister Bryony. He broke into her house and doused it in petrol. Bryony and her children were trapped upstairs. Today he was found guilty of their murders and the attempted murder of Antonia.
Nothing will ever fill the silence where their laughter should be. Nothing will ever bring back our family. We will forever carry this brokenness, and yet we will hold on to them tightly in only ways we can now, through our memories, our photos and our precious videos. Those are all we have left now.
Stay there! Do not move! Show me your hands! Show me your hands now. What's your name? Callum. Right.
On the night of the fatal blaze last August, Ali recruited the help of convicted arsonist Callum Sunderland, who was today found guilty of manslaughter. They filled up a canister with fuel from a petrol station and then headed to Bryony's home. Sunderland fled after kicking down the door, but Ali went inside. He poured petrol around the house and hit the lighter. Antonia tried to stop him, but she couldn't.
Despite the screams of Antonia, Bryony and unfortunately likely the children, despite knowing undoubtedly by this time that Bryony and the children were upstairs with no way of escape, and despite knowing the devastation a fuel-filled fire would create in a residential address, he doused that house in petrol and set it alight.
Ali was captured on CCTV buying a bottle of vodka on the night of the fire. The prosecution said he was fuelled by drink and drugs, bent on revenge.
During the trial, Ali claimed that he only ever intended to harm himself, but the jury simply didn't believe him. He's been left with life-changing injuries, and the judge today ordered a medical assessment into his health before he's sentenced.
The judge and West Yorkshire Police praised Antonia for her bravery as she desperately tried to save her family. Ali and Sunderland will be sentenced at a later date. Charlotte Leeming, Sky News, Doncaster.
So it's come here on the UK Tonight why people from ethnic minorities are struggling to get help with gambling addictions. Also ahead, tributes to the shopaholic author Sophie Kinsella. We'll hear from a friend of the late novelist. And are you smart enough to be a spy? We'll take a look at GCHQ's Christmas challenge.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Next tonight, the growing problem of gambling addiction in the UK and the stigma that surrounds it. New research shows that the issue affects some communities more than others. People from ethnic minority backgrounds are more likely to suffer harm as a result of a gambling problem, but are twice as likely to hide it. Sky's Emma Birchley has been taking a look at this story and has this report. But just to warn you, it does contain some descriptions of distress that you may find upsetting.
On a dark December morning 2 years ago, Kiki Marriott left her flat in southeast London as the city slept and started walking.
I was numb at that point. I was just so
done with trying to survive.
Kiki was trapped in a cycle of addiction, gambling all hours, taking cocaine for the maximum buzz. But that morning, instead of taking her own life, she decided to seek help. Yet what she would find on that journey of recovery would shock her.
I just realised that there wasn't anybody that looked like me or sounded like me. And it got me to thinking, well, I can't be the only black woman suffering with a gambling or cocaine addiction.
Lots of research has been done showing that people from ethnic minority backgrounds are less likely to gamble than their white counterparts, but more likely to suffer harm from that gambling. And the reports have also shown that they're less likely to seek help for the problem.
Research shared exclusively with Sky News, commissioned by GamCare, which runs the National Gambling Helpline, shed some light on why that might be. It found that 2/3 of people from ethnic minority backgrounds who'd gambled in the past year had spent more money than they'd planned, compared to just over 1/3 of white people. While 20% said they felt guilty about the way they gambled, always or most of the time, compared to 7% of those who were white. Kiki understands that guilt. As her cocaine habit grew, so did her gambling addiction, numbing the pain from trauma, including sexual abuse as a child. And she became hooked on online slots, doing just 10 and 20p spins on benefits, borrowing money from those around her. It got so bad, at 15, her daughter moved out.
For me, coming from a black community, a black background, what goes on indoors stays behind closed doors. You keep your mouth shut and you handle your business yourself.
But Dermy Kapadia, an academic expert in racial inequality, thinks there's more than just cultural pressure at play.
People don't want to go and get help from gambling services because of previous racist treatment that they've suffered at the hands of other statutory services. For example, when they went to the GP to get help for a health problem.
After leaving the station that winter's morning, Kiki found the number of the gambling helpline and called. Since then, there's been constant therapy, including a stint in rehab in Wales.
So how long have you lived in this flat?
Coming up 6 years now.
Now the flat where once Kiki couldn't even go to the bathroom without gambling has become the place that she runs her own online peer mentoring groups.
How's your week been?
She knows she'll need to attend support groups herself for life to keep her addictions at bay. But she has a clear goal.
My focus is to help empower other people to choose themselves, to show them that you don't have to be a victim of your circumstances.
And that includes her role as a mum.
It was either I was going to die or I was going to become a woman and a mother that my daughter could come back to and respect again.
Which has happened now, hasn't it?
Yes, it has, yeah. We've got an amazing relationship today.
It's more than Kiki could have dreamt of 2 years ago. Now all she wants is to help others escape the endless cycle of addiction. Emma Birchley, Sky News.
Well, Emma is here in the studio now alongside Haj Ghali, a recovering gambling addict and campaigner. So good to have you in the studio. Thanks so much for coming in, and Emma, of course, as well. Haj, where should we start? Because the report that Emma's brought us tonight is a very familiar story to you. When did your gambling addiction start?
So my gambling addiction started shortly after I left university in 2009.
So young?
Well, you say it's young, but I think it's getting like that now. So it literally started off as a simple thing with a couple of friends, went into a casino, started playing blackjack, and I turned £20 into £60 within 30 minutes. So in my mind, I'm like, this is quick, easy, fun.
Feel invincible.
And free. You know what I mean? So this is free money. So that, I think, was the start of my downfall.
How quickly did that downfall come about? Because you got into £250,000 worth of debt.
Yeah, so within a year, I had a bit of money because I'd started up a business which I sold. But in 1 year, I'd gambled away £60,000. But then I realised that, I need to make this money back or pay some of these debts. So I started a corporate world. But when I got my first paycheck, I didn't see that as money to pay my debts back. It was money to basically bankroll my addiction. So come high or hell, every month I was getting a bankroll. And there'll be times where I'd wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, where somebody might wake up at 6, and I've gambled away a month's worth of wages even before someone has woken up. And that was at least some reality of my life.
And then you feel like got to chase it back and try and make that money back. I mean, that was something I was hearing from Kiki, and you have this kind of... You think you've got a plan, don't you? And you've got a pattern of your gambling. I mean, I know that was the same for you as it was for Kiki.
Yeah, at first it starts off like a game of luck, right? Oh, I like that colour, I like that number. Then it becomes a case of, oh, I know that racer, I know this trainer, I know this, I know that, I know these scores. So you start to try to make better bets in the light that you might be able to win, or you did this differently. But the truth was, gambling was consuming every minute of my day, from waking up, booking meetings, staying behind, the lies, the secrecies, because they talk about compulsive gambling, but they don't talk about the compulsive line that comes with it.
How long did this go on for?
So this carried on for 12 years, and the exact date where I had to face D-Day with my wife was the 16th of June 2020. We hit the pandemic. I remember this day in the morning. My wife is in our room, and I remember her looking up at me with these eyes of pure disappointment. And there it was, black and white. I had a hidden account, and there it was, black and white, just transactions after transactions. You're talking tens of thousands of pounds.
I mean, you've just told us the scale of your gambling addiction, and like you said, the lies, your wife had no idea up until that point. And what was the effect on you both? Because it had a really profound effect on you, to the point where you couldn't see a way out and drove into a central reservation.
So I'm quite fortunate where my wife still stuck through me, and it was actually my father-in-law, which is unheard of from the South Asian community, that said, we need to help him. And because of that, my wife still stuck by me, but we need to get professional help. I turned to my faith, and I felt rejected from them, and I felt angry at them. But as I went through the recovery, I started with NHS. But the problem with NHS was, my first meeting was all online, because I couldn't do it in person because we'd gone in lockdown. I'm in a group setting, and I was saying to you before, wasn't I, that 1, it was all male, 2, they were all white, and 3, they were all 40 plus. And to layer on top of that, my therapists were all white as well. So in my head, I'm like, do you actually understand me, my culture, my background, and what I'm going through? Because let's be honest with you, there's different cultural and societal differences. So you might be able to...
shames that come with that. I mean, Emma, that's what you've uncovered in this reporting. When we think of gambling addiction, it's predominantly older white men, or so we believe. That is the stereotype. But, you know, Haj is here, you know, sitting here as proof that that is not the case, and that's what you found, this whole hidden world.
Indeed, and I think with Kiki, that was exactly what she said. She thought, well, I can't be a gambling addict. You know, you think that these are white men in the bookies drinking a pint. She looked up online. She saw people who were remortgaging their home, getting into enormous amounts of debt. She was doing 10p spins, 20p spins. She was on benefits. She was borrowing money from friends. You know, she wasn't that kind of person. And yet, quite clearly, it had a complete hook on her. But then when she ultimately, in the end, got into that whole recovery cycle, which, of course, will last forever, but began that, you know, she didn't see anyone like her. And for her, that really mattered. That really mattered. She wanted, the phrase, she wanted someone who looked like her or sounded like her, who could understand her background. I mean, why is that so important?
Yeah, because you said that amongst your community, the South Asian community, the Sikh community, you were talking about drug and alcohol addiction. Yeah. That was spoken about, but not gambling.
No, because you can't see it. And I think even with addictions, I think this is not just South Asian, I think this is ethnic minorities where, look, we don't gamble as much as, say, the white counterparts, but the ones that do are up to 5 times more likely to suffer severe harms. And the thing with that is, I think it's that cultural differences. What's my parents going to think about it? And I think there's this big sheer... I think this word that we use in our culture, which is called sharam and izzat, which means shame and honour. So if our family finds out about this, well, are they going to talk to us? Our community are not going to talk to us. And even worse, will they speak to our parents or will they speak bad about us? So that was happening to me, and I felt like, actually, I don't want this to go out because I don't want my family or the people around me to get in the same place that I was, and that led me to a very, very dark path.
Haj, how are you doing now? Because the thing with addiction, when you talk about drugs and alcohol, you know, people always describe themselves as a recovering addict. That label of addict never leaves them. Is it the same with gambling? How do you manage it now?
I think my turning point was when, on the 18th of August, when I tried to attempt on my own life, because that's the way I saw it out. But I was fortunate where my son, Jeevan, saved my life, because his name means life on our language. But for that, really was, I found my purpose, was when I started going out there on social media and saying, I'm Harj Ghale, I'm a recovering gambling addict, this is my story. I've helped more than 200 people start their journey to recovery. I've stopped 12 people from taking their own life. So when you talk what drives me, my purpose drives me. So I wake up with drive, with purpose, but I'm a human being. Like recently, and I've had my ups and downs, and I think it's almost like this saying, you always remember your first. It doesn't go away from you, but you've got to learn to make other things a priority in your life. So that never shows up. But we're human beings, but I now have a support network that I can reach out to.
Oh, well, by talking about it so openly, as you said, you know, you've helped hundreds of people personally, and just by doing this interview and putting it out there, and Emma, with your reporting as well, it goes some way to sort of addressing that stigma and trying to give people the courage to get help. Harj, thank you so much for coming to tell us your story. I really appreciate your time. Emma, thank you as well. Thanks so much. Well, if you've been affected by this story, you can contact the Samaritans. 116123 is their number, or you can email them at any time, joe@samaritans.org. And you can also reach out to the National Gambling Helpline. They are on 0808 8020 133, and their website, gamecare.org.uk. It's on your screen. Right, so to come on the UK Tonight, we'll be hearing from a friend of Sophie Kinsella, the author of the Shopaholic novels, who has died at the age of 55. The author of the best-selling Shopaholic novel, Sophie Kinsella, has died at the age of 55. The author, whose real name was Madeline Sophie Wickham, revealed last year that she had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of brain cancer in 2022. In a statement, her family wrote, "We are heartbroken to announce the passing this morning of our beloved Sophie. She died peacefully, with her final days filled with her true loves, family and music and warmth and Christmas and joy. Well, I'm joined now by one of Sophie's friends and fellow novelist, Jojo Moyes. Jojo, thank you so much for coming on to pay tribute to your close friends, because you were friends for decades.
Yes, we were. I was lucky enough to be friends with her. She was an extraordinary person.
That word joy that her family used in the statement, I must admit, whenever I think of Sophie Kinsella books, I think of that. There was no darkness in her book. And me and my friends used to refer to them as just like us books, because the characters would be so relatable. Young women getting themselves into situations we could all see ourselves in, and finding the comedy and the joy in that. She really did bring the fun and the light through her books, didn't she?
She did, and she was a joyful person. You know, someone who was talking to me today about her said she was so uplifting. You always felt uplifted when you left her. And I feel like that's what her books convey. I think they couldn't hide who she was. So the characters might be flawed and messy, but they were also relatable. And you always finished a Sophie Kinsella book feeling better about life. And that's the kind of person she was as well.
Jojo, can you talk to us about her diagnosis? Because she was open about it. In fact, her last book, What Does It Feel Like? She called it her most autobiographical novel. She used her experience of her diagnosis, her treatment, her life with brain cancer, all the messiness and the humour as well that comes with it. Can you talk me through what that was like for her?
Well, I mean, how like Sophie to be diagnosed with pretty much one of the worst illnesses you can ever have, and then write an amazing book about it. I mean, we were all in shock for the first year of her diagnosis. It was kept very quiet because she wanted time to let her family adjust, as well as she needed to adjust to what the diagnosis was. But then she thought she was ready and her children were ready, and she was very open about the illness. And I think so many people got comfort from that book because, yes, it's a sad book and it's a realistic book, but it's also filled with moments of poignancy and joy. You know, one of the phrases she used to use is normal plus. So when she knew that her life expectancy had been so reduced, she didn't want to do any of the enormous things. She didn't need to climb a mountain or run a marathon. What she liked was normal, but with a little bit extra. So watching TV, but with better snacks, or, you know, nicer marmalade. And I thought there was just something lovely about that, because the thing about Sophie, she always knew what was actually important. She and Henry were married for 35 years. They absolutely adored each other. She adored her children. They were her world. So that while she did have a career, you never were in any doubt that the things that were most important to her were quite ordinary things, which were love and family and the people that she cared about being around her. And I think that's what she took comfort from in the last couple of years of her life.
Yeah, you wrote a quote for the front of the book that says simply, "I laughed and I cried, a jewel of a book." Her last book, What Does It Feel Like? What will her legacy be? Because, you know, when you talk about normal plus, watching TV shows with better snacks, that's the relatability of Sophie Kinsella. You know, you'll have read her books, you may never have met her, but you feel like you know her. You can immediately, as a woman, think, oh, she's one of us girls.
Yeah, it was fascinating to be in an audience of her readers, because every single one of them, even when she was ill, you know, when she gave a talk, there would just be beams across the audience. Everybody would be happy. There was something about her that brought joy to people. So I feel like a really fitting legacy for her would be that her books will continue to spread joy. And those of us who were lucky to know her will always be grateful to have had her in our lives, because she was a very graceful person. She was a very kind person. She was an encouraging person. I've spoken before about how she was partly responsible for me writing the book that changed my life. She was a mentor. And, you know, if the thing that you are remembered for is joy and grace and kindness, as well as your talent, I mean, what more can any of us ask?
No, indeed. And what I didn't know, which when I was reading about her today and preparing for this interview, is that she started out as a financial journalist, which I just love that small detail. How did she pivot?
Well, she would be the first to admit that she wasn't a particularly good financial journalist. I think she had almost zero interest in it, as her later credit card statements would show. So she started writing books, and she actually got her first book published, which was under her real name, Madeline Wickham, at I think the age of 24. And her books were quite different then. They were sort of much less about one person, much more kind of multiple people at the front of it. And they were a little bit more grown up, I would say. And then I think she kind of embraced the fun later on with the Shopaholic books and Can You Keep a Secret and The 20s Girl, all the things that so many readers cite as their favourites. But I think also I slightly corrected someone today for using the term chick lit, which she did not love. Because even if you associate that with something that's sort of shallow and silly, what her books were the opposite of that. They were very skillfully crafted. They were very beautifully written. The characters were people that readers identified with. And there is a reason she sold 50 million books, and it's because she wrote really, really well. So I hope if people remember her, as well as the joy, they will also remember that she was an extraordinarily talented writer.
Yeah, her books definitely do not deserve the term chick lit, based on 50 million sales. And like I said, myself and my friends that read them called them Just Like Us books, which I think is a much nicer term. Jojo, thank you so much for coming on to remember your friend and the brilliant author, Sophie Kinsella. I know a lot of people will be taking her books off their bookshelves today and revisiting some of their favourites. Thank you, Jojo. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Still to come on the UK Tonight, we'll be taking a look at GCHQ's annual Christmas puzzle. And no, I can't figure it out. It's aimed for children. I can't do it. I'm going to have a bit of help, basically, in a few moments' time. Coming up in the sport, I understand that a little bit better. Ahead of the World Championship, how Luke Littler-mania keeps pushing darts to new levels.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest and Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything, it's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island. The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe. Sky News, get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out.
The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here. In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Jess is here with the sport. The World's Darts Championship is back tomorrow. Bigger than ever, live on Sky Sports, of course, and one of the stars of the show, Luke Littler, there he is. Still just a teenager. We were just discussing in the break as I was looking at the script, and I was like, still a teenager? It feels like he's been around for ages, but he's only 18. But he's really elevating this sport and taking it to new levels, isn't he?
He really is. The excitement, the interest, the popularity around the sport is at unprecedented levels. There's more social media coverage, more coverage in newspapers, TV ratings are higher, and everyone is putting it down to this young man, Luke Littler. He's had an extraordinary impact on the sport. He's just 18 years of age. And he's been playing this sport since he was in nappies, Sarah-Jane, can you imagine? And it was 2 years ago, so 16-year-old, he made his debut on the world stage, and he's just blown the sport away in those 2 years. His achievements have been exceptional, world #1 now, defending world champion as well. And you know that it's having a real-world effect when we go into this World Championships and the prize money has doubled from last year. Also, more young people than ever before are taking up the sport because of Luke Littler.
It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, you know he's a superstar, but I remember getting an alert on my phone earlier this year and going, oh, Luke Littler. Luke Littler passes his driving test. you know you're a star when you're getting that level of interest. When can we see him in action? Because it starts tomorrow night.
Yes, so not long to wait. He will be defending his World Championship title. He plays in round 1 tomorrow night. Coverage gets underway at 7 o'clock on Sky Sports Darts. It just seems like the world cannot get enough of Luke Littler, and the Luke Littler effect is having such an impact on this sport.
Oh, looking forward to it.
It's going to be so much fun. But before that, we've got lots of football to update you on.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Sorry, I just have a German passport. Hopefully I can convince them and show them and prove them that I'm proud to be the English manager.
For only the 3rd time in history, the FA have turned to a foreign manager to take charge of the men's England team. Thomas Tuchel follows in the footsteps of Sven-Göran Eriksson.
If we don't do results, of course, they will try to hang me, but even if I was an Englishman, they hang me. So that's...
And Fabio Capello.
A winner with a capital W. That was the template. This is the man.
When the news about Tuchel broke, there was a mixed media reaction. Some in Tuchel see a Champions League winning manager and the best candidate available if you want to win a World Cup. That's
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Now, the big question today, are you smart enough to be a spy? Well, you can put your skills to the test with GCHQ's annual Christmas challenge, which was released earlier today. 7 puzzles are contained in the intelligence agency's Christmas card. Here they are, 3 versions, which for the first time feature designs from school children as well as spies. The brain teasers are designed to test a range of problem-solving skills such as lateral thinking, ingenuity and perseverance. GCHQ saying these famously tricky puzzles aren't meant to be solved alone. So I have enlisted Julian Richards, a former intelligence analyst at GCHQ. Richard, I'm really pleased to have you on the show because, Julian, I'm really pleased to have you on the show because I have been looking at these puzzles today and I cannot make head nor tail of them. And they're actually aimed at children, aren't they?
They are. I'm afraid, Sarah-Jane, I'm not going to be able to help you very much because these really are very difficult puzzles indeed.
Oh, no, they've even foxed you.
Yes, no, this follows a sort of annual, what's becoming an annual tradition now of, really quite challenging puzzles that GCHQ are putting out there that quite a lot of people are actually not able to solve, or certainly not very easily. Myself included, I'm ashamed to say.
Oh, well, do you know what? That's made me feel slightly better because I was really nervous about this interview. I was getting that feeling of walking into a maths test because I feel like I'm a bit number puzzle blind. I'm not very good. I can't use that side of my brain very well. But the Spies Agency chief puzzler, apparently, is known as Colin, and he's put together these puzzles. Is Colin like a Q character, like a James Bond-style character at GCHQ?
Well, I just love the way he's called Colin. Of course, we don't know who this is. I certainly know from having worked there that there are some incredible people who work there, incredibly, world-class code breakers and mathematicians, the likes of which you wouldn't find anywhere else. So these are seriously smart people. Of course, it involves a lot of different people working in a spy agency with different skills. Not everyone is a master code breaker, but the lateral thinking skills that you really need to have to try and take on these puzzles are the sorts of thing that they're looking for.
Yeah, we're looking at the Christmas cards now designed by school children who were asked to imagine what GCHQ would look like. I like this one, obviously inspired slightly by Stranger Things with the lights there and all the numbers. And I'm going to let you into a little secret. If you thought we were bad at cracking these codes, Julian, you and I, my director just went, here's one of the puzzles and put on the front of the Christmas card. These are the actual puzzles. So look, part of this is figuring out where the puzzles are. They're inside the card, and this is what it looks like. I think we can just make out number 3, which is a robber that has to get through a house in a series of doors there. You can see red and blue doors to go through and can't go through the same door twice. I thought that might be the easiest one, and I could not do it. There's also what looks like a word snake up there, and you've got to find some words in there. I mean, I just couldn't do it. And this is aimed at, I think I'm right, sort of 8 to 16-year-olds, Julian. We're looking at some seriously clever kids if they can crack this, right?
We certainly are, yes. And of course, the world of spying is a world in which nothing is quite as it seems. You need a different sort of brain, a different way of thinking to approach it. And there's a serious message here that GCHQ and other agencies of its type are looking for the next generation of clever thinkers and code breakers. There are issues, as you know, with kids getting into STEM subjects. There's gender imbalances and so on. So there's a serious point here that all of us would quite like to identify youngsters who really seem to have this way of thinking that could get them into this sort of career and get them working in the pursuit of our national security.
Well, listen, it's been really good to have you on, Julian. And any parents who are watching, if your child can crack those codes, then they have got a serious career ahead of them, either as a spy or in STEM. There are some people that really have the knack for it. There are people like you and I, Julian, and my director tonight, who I won't name, who can't do it. So there you go. No spying for us. Julian Richards, really good to have you, a former intelligence analyst at GCHQ. That's all from the UK Tonight. We'll return tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Dominic Waghorn has the world for you next. We'll see you tomorrow night at 8.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.